Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Harvey B. Gantt Center's Family First, Arts from a Distance. For the next hour, we'll learn helpful topics of creative writing, followed by creation of our own written work with teaching artist Ashley Nickens. Let's get started. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to the Gantt Center First for that amazing introductory video. As you saw, my name is Ashley Nickens, and I am so excited to be with you all today for this Family First program on creative writing. Before we jump right in, I do want to just take a moment to kind of collect us in this space together, since we cannot be in physical space like I like to be and like I'm sure many of you would like to be. So I'm just going to invite you, if you can and if you would like, to take just one collective breath with me now and to breathe out as we center ourselves in this practice and shake off any creative jitters or blocks that we may still have. So today, we're just going to be going over 5 really quick, really easy creative writing techniques that you can incorporate into any kind of literary piece you are writing. Throughout the entire workshop, you'll be able to ask me any questions you have, so just shoot them in the chat below and I'll answer them as I see them pop up. And at the end, which is my favorite part of the workshop, you will have time to share your piece with us. You'll be able to hop on camera and show us what you were able to create today. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump straight in. The first thing that we're going to do is look at a poem from one of my favorite poets and someone who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And I chose this poem because it captures all of the techniques that we're going to look at today. And it's Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. So what we're going to do is actually watch a quick video of Viola Davis reciting that poem, and then we're going to jump straight into our techniques. So make sure you have something to write with and something to write on so we can go ahead and get started.
Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time I's been a-climbing on, and reaching landings, and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps 'cause you find it's kinda hard. Don't you fall now. Fires are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
All right, so again, that was one of my favorite poems by Langston Hughes, Mother to Son, and I chose it because it quickly encapsulates everything that we're going to talk about today, okay? So we're going to jump right into our first creative writing technique that I want us to learn about and be able to practice at the end of our workshop. All right, so very first technique is just meaningful connection. So anytime you sit down to write any type of piece, you want to first consider who you're writing to and what it is that you're writing about. And today I want us to think about how much more meaningful it is when we're passionate and connected about who we're writing to and what we're writing about. Because when we are, it's that much more meaningful and impactful to our reader. So if we take a look at the poem Mother to Son, we can see even by the title, there is this connection that is felt between the speaker and who she's writing this poem to, her son. And because there is this meaningful and passionate connection, we can see that she cares very deeply about the lesson she's trying to teach him, about how her life hasn't been easy, but she's maintained and she's kept going on, okay? So that's our first one. And we're going to jump into the second technique now, which are metaphors. So some of you may already know what a metaphor is. It's a type of figurative language, which is just a comparison between two things that are not alike without using the word like or as. So in the poem that we looked at, the speaker compares her life to stairs. And if you just think about it out of context or without reading the poem or watching the video like we did, you're like, what in the world does life have to do with stairs? But if we take a look at the poem and we look at the way that the author says that her life ain't been no crystal stair, it makes us wonder, okay, so what would a life be like if it were a crystal, smooth and easy and shiny stair? And she also helps us understand that her life has had tacks in it, right? It's had splinters and boards torn up. And we know that doesn't mean that her life has really been stairs, but it's a comparison. And because she makes that comparison, we understand more deeply that her life has been difficult. You can imagine what it would be like if you were climbing upstairs and you stepped on a step that had splinters in it or tacks in it, and how difficult that would be or how painful that would be, right? And so when we use metaphors, it helps our reader understand what we're saying without just saying, life's been hard, it hasn't been easy. This way, it is more descriptive and it is more rich. All right, our next one that we're going to get into is just using everyday, regular, common language. So this is one of my favorite techniques, and I want to be sure to point out that you can't necessarily use this one in any kind of writing that you do, but for today and for informal creative writing, when you use common phrases in just realistic language, like the way you talk to your brother or your sister or your mom, it adds a personal element to our writing. It makes it more realistic and helps us to sink into that moment. So if we look at the poem that we read, we see that the speaker uses words like ain't, eyes, a been, reaching, landings, turning, going. All of these words are written and spoken, as we heard from Viola Davis, in a way that sounds just like the mom is talking to us. We can clearly imagine and hear her words, and because of that, it creates a better connection with the subject and with the person who's writing the story. And so today you have the opportunity to kind of like forget about all those formal English rules, and you can use ain't, and you can use y'all, and you can use whatever other everyday regular English that you feel would help your reader connect to what you're trying to say and make it sound more personable. All right. Awesome. All right, I'm imagining that we're putting thumbs up and nodding, so that's why I keep saying okay. And I'm going to take a drink of water as we get into our next technique. Excuse me. All right, so imagery. This is a really easy one. When you hear the word imagery, what I want you to do is automatically think of the word imagine, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the reader to imagine what it is that we're describing by using language that appeals to all of our senses. And I'm going to go ahead and list all the senses and hold me accountable in case I miss one and like put it in the chat. Because when we're writing, we want to try to see if we can describe things in a way that helps you hear what's going on or helps the reader imagine what it sounds like. We want to see what you're seeing or what you're describing so that they can imagine that vividly in their minds. You can even describe how things taste. So is there something that you want to write about that tastes so good and you just want to describe it so vividly that whoever is reading your story can imagine it and want some too, right? Or what about feel and touch? Can you describe the way the sun is hitting your face in a way that your reader could close their eyes and also feel the sun on their skin? Or maybe the way the wind feels, right? And then our last one, and I think I forgot which one I missed. So we said sight, hearing, touch. Did I say smell, taste? Let's see if someone's gonna put it in the chat if I'm forgetting one. Either way, we know what our 5 senses are, and we know that we can appeal to them by just using very, very descriptive language. And if we look at the poem, we can see how this speaker appeals to so many of our different senses, especially the sense of touch. So in the poem, when it says that the mother has had when she says that the steps have splinters in them and boards torn up, we can imagine what it would feel like to step on a splinter or to step on a space that has a board torn up. We can also close our eyes and we can imagine what the staircase looks like with no carpet when it is bare, right? We can also imagine what it is like to have to like feel our way through a staircase or through a hallway in the dark. And all of those images, all of the images and the pictures that we create in our head help us to better understand the main idea or the main message of the poem. And so every time the speaker creates this image in our heads, we're understanding how hard her life was, how difficult it was. But no matter what, she just kept right on going along, right? So today, we want to try to incorporate as much descriptive detail, as much descriptive language as possible into our piece as well. All right, we're going to get into our last technique, which is a very simple one, repetition. So this is exactly what it sounds like. When we use repetition in our stories or in our poems, you're just going to repeat a word or a phrase or a line that's going to help you highlight your main idea. So in the poem, we see that there's one line in particular that repeats itself. In the very beginning, the speaker says, "Life for me ain't been no crystal stair." And then the speaker goes on to explain what they mean by that, right? And we've talked about that to this point. And then right before she repeats that line one more time, she reminds him that even though her life has been hard, she's still going, honey. She's still climbing. And life for her ain't been no crystal stair. And so again, that draws emphasis, or it helps us to really, really understand how much this speaker or this mother has kept going, has kept fighting, and how important it is for her to help her son realize that he can do the same thing. So when we choose very specific phrases that help us understand that main idea, or where we point those one or two things out, it helps our reader get that more deeply. All right. So to review, there were 5 techniques, and there will be a slide that pops up with them in a bit. And what we're going to do now is get into a writing prompt that I'm going to ask you all to participate in, where you write a letter, a poem, or a short story to connect to a family member. And I'm going to ask you to use as many of the techniques as possible, but if that is too much, if you just want to focus on one or two and you really want to make sure you incorporate those, that works as well, okay? The letter can be about anything, the poem, the short story, as long as you try to incorporate some of those techniques. I'm also going to invite you to use one of the latest exhibits at the Gantt Center as inspiration in your piece. Now, you don't have to, it's completely up to you, but I do want us to take a look at some pictures of this new exhibit because it offers us some really neat ways to think about some of the techniques we've already talked about today, okay? So again, this exhibit is called Intersectionality, and we're just gonna see a couple of pictures, and you can use these for inspiration, but you do not have to. The first piece is by Anya Murray. And so what you're looking at is a 3D sculpture or a 3D installation that's basically 7 stacked cairns of these objects that this artist found in this space or this landscape. And all of these objects could be things that, you know, some people would throw away or thought they didn't have any meaning to them. But this artist was able to repurpose them and demonstrate a story with them. So I want you to consider if maybe you have a memory and a place with a loved one or a family member that's special to you, and see if you could describe that landscape in your letter to them, or your poem, or your short story, or whatever it is that you're creating. The next piece that you can get inspiration from is by Evelyn Pulitzer. And so you have 3 pictures that you see on the screen because we really want you to try to look at the way that this artist used hand knit wool to make these raindrops, and try to imagine what they may feel like. Think about how they could move if the air conditioning was on a little heavy, right? And think if you can describe something in a way that moves or feels textured like this picture does, or this picture of this exhibit does. And then the final piece that we're just gonna let you use as inspiration if you would like, is by Jared McGriff, and it's an oil painting of what could be sisters, what could be the same person. They could not be related at all, but we can feel that there is a connection between these characters, right? We can feel that there is something between them. And that connection is something that we can explore in our writing, right? So what might a story about these 2 characters, or a letter between these 2 characters, what might it say or be about? And how could you convey that in very descriptive, vivid language, okay? So again, those are just pieces that you can use for inspiration, but the most important part that I want you to do is just try to incorporate as many of these techniques, or 1 or 2 that you really want to focus on, into either a letter, a poem, a short story to a family member, okay? That's it. We're gonna have about until, let's see, I'm gonna give you guys until 3:45 to really get your writing done. And what I'm gonna do is around 3:40, I'm gonna come back and start reading a little bit of what I wrote, or something that I'm gonna try to finish up right now. That way you'll know it's time to start wrapping up what you're doing and start coming back together as a group. After that, you all are gonna have an opportunity to share on camera if you would like, and I am very excited about that part. You'll get instructions on how to do that in the chat window, so just be on the lookout for that. And then, as I mentioned, you're gonna have up until 3:45 to get some creative work done, okay? All right, again, I'm imagining that we're thumbs upping and that we're head nodding. So feel free to use those pieces as inspiration. We'll kind of switch the slide back and forth so that you can see those pieces again, but you don't have to. You can just go off of the writing prompt. writing is going well so far. You have plenty of time. I just wanted to offer you some words of encouragement and tell you that I'm focusing a lot on imagery. I hope that you can pick up on some of the things that I'm trying to incorporate when I share my piece. Remember, some of the other techniques are just meaningful connection, connecting with who we're writing to, what we're writing about, using metaphors or comparisons to help really drive home our point, repetition, repeating specific things if you would like to use that as a way to convey that connection or convey that meaning. Incorporate as many of those techniques as possible, okay? You all have about 15 minutes to keep on writing. I'm just coming in to give you an update of your time and also remind you to try to use as much everyday language as you can, as much folk language, throw in some y'alls, throw in some ain'ts. Use imagery. We want to help our readers and the rest of the participants really imagine what it is that we're writing about. Remember that technique to connect meaningfully, to start with that point, right? To think about who we're writing to and choose a subject that we are passionate about. Remember in the poem that we looked at, Mother to Son by Langston Hughes, and how passionate the mother was about that life lesson, that her life hasn't been easy. It's been hard, but she's kept going on. Think about how passionate she was when she was talking to her son. Try to incorporate some of that feeling or add some of that feeling by using metaphors like our author did when they compared their life to stairs, right? Anything that you can do to really drive home that connection, drive home those main ideas. Repetition, remember that last one is the really easy technique where you can maybe start with a line and end with a line, or start with a phrase and end with a phrase. And remember, you can use any of those pieces from the latest exhibit at the Gantt Center, Intersectionality, to try to draw some extra inspiration, right? Use those as a way to tap into some of that creative energy. And then in about 15 minutes, or excuse me, in about 10 minutes, I'll pop back in to share with you what I have. And after that, you all will be able to share your work as well on camera, okay? have about 10 minutes until it's time for you to share. 5 minutes until I share with you what I have. I'm going to ask you to jot down the techniques that you think I am trying to use. As I was writing, I tried to take another breath like we did in the beginning to kind of center myself, to tap into whatever feelings I was having or who I wanted to connect to, and let that guide my practice. It's a technique that I learned from Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who is a writer from Durham or who lives in Durham. And she always starts her practice by getting centered, getting grounded, taking a deep breath in, and kind of approaching it as if it were a meditation. And that helps us to connect more meaningfully with what we're doing, okay? So again, you guys have about 10 minutes before we're going to try to share. Remember, those instructions for you to be able to pop up on the camera and share your masterpiece with us are going to just be in the chat around 3:40. So in 3 minutes or so, I will share with you what I have, and I hope that you can wrap something up gorgeously that you'll be able to share with us too. All right, go ahead and start finishing up. You all have about 5 minutes to try to put some finishing touches on whatever you are able to create, whether or not it is finished or just the first few lines of something. No matter what it is, we do want to hear from you if you feel comfortable sharing. I can't ask you to do that though without me doing it as well. So I will share a short story that I began, and I tried to add some stuff to it today. As I'm reading, feel free to just pop stuff in the chat that you hear. If you hear any of our creative writing techniques, meaningful connection, metaphors, using everyday, regular old language, imagery, those vivid pictures that we can imagine in our head, or any repetition, okay? And this is just a short story that I wrote that is based on my life, but not all the way true. And my mom might be listening. So mommy, I know everything is not real. It is fiction. It's called Into the Woods. Mommy was grateful that Bountiful Blessings was opening its doors the summer of '97 when she moved back to Chesapeake. We were going to be living with my granddaddy in the home she'd known all her life while she saved to buy her own. And the cost of being a single working parent was already on the rise, and so she was grateful. Sometimes she'd call it lucky. Other times, even though it wasn't that often, she referred to the serendipity as a blessing. The owners of Bountiful Blessings were a married couple whose love oozed off of them and into every corner of the child care facility their Lord had called them to open. They met at Oscar Smith, what used to be and technically still operated unofficially as the Black high school in the city. Had my mother been born just a few years earlier, maybe she too would have attended the neighborhood school, since, after all, Granddaddy's house was right next to the red brick home that the daycare owner's mother still lived in. But by the time my mom reached school age, Chesapeake had been integrated, and the districts bound by new borders. The couple opened Bountiful Blessings about 7 minutes down the road from where we were. I guess there was a sort of familiarity to the tree-lined route on the way to the center that I went to every day from '97 to '03. From the back seat, I would watch the swaying weeping willow vines that grew longer each passing year. I always wondered if they were strong enough to hold my weight. I wanted to climb the slick ropes. And there were so many southern magnolia trees. Sometimes my mom would stop on the side of the road to pick a few of the fragrant flowers and place them in my room the way she told me her mother had. Lifting the face-sized blossoms up to my nose, I inhaled the citrusy honey perfume and felt the connection to my roots. My mother chose to believe in the vision of childcare these providers shared. See, that's the thing about home daycares. They don't always work how people think they should. When it first opened, there weren't enough kids to bother with city reports. It was neither credentialed nor governed by the system. And at any given moment, we were overseen by one of the owners or one of their teenage sons or the daughter they'd recently taken in. But the best part, if you could really call it a facility, was the massive front, side, and backyard. Inside, there were toys and a television set that we would watch Rush Hour on. But outside, there were woods, and that meant freedom. Can we go outside, we would plead as soon as we finished our homework and finished our ration of snacks. The field that opened up to what felt like a jungle was covered with white clovers that we strung together to adorn ourselves with crowns. And those yellow buttercup flowers that we held under each other's chins to see if you like butter or not. See? It works. Your chin is yellow. You really love butter, don't you? It didn't matter that we all sort of knew the logic didn't make sense. The sun reflected the weed on everyone's chin differently. How much you could see depended solely on how dark their skin was. And besides, who in the South don't like butter? All right. I hope that you were able to pick up on some of the techniques that I use. I hope that maybe that shook off some of the jitters that you may have about sharing, and that any of you would be willing to share with us the masterpiece that you started or created today. So do I have any volunteers that would like to share with us their piece that they wrote today? Ah, yes, I did use metaphors. Awesome. And you used dandelions. Any of those yellow weeds, I feel like we picked them up, but those buttercups were my favorite. I'm glad you picked up on that. There was a lot of imagery. That's the one that I tried to focus on the most. Did anyone else focus on imagery or like try to paint a vivid picture with their words? Another one that I tried to incorporate was repetition. There was just one section where I was able to get that in, and that's where I talked about how grateful my mother was for this daycare center. And I wanted to emphasize that in the same way that Langston Hughes' mother did, because it was part of my main idea. This daycare was like a huge part of me growing up. I love those people still to death. And so that connection shines through by repeating those things, right? All right, I'm going to see if there's anyone who would like to share. Remember, your work does not have to be complete. It does not have to be finished, right? I want you to be able to come back to this, come back on a later date and finish up. All right, I think we have someone who's going to share, a lovely volunteer. I thought I saw a hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Ronald. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I love the way you used the word inhaled, which is a colorful word, and immediately connected it to your roots so that you would think about the woods and the smelling and the aromas of a meadowland.
Thank you. Thank you. That was one of the things that I tried to pick up on. Did you have something that you wanted to share with us? Awesome. I'm so excited. Hi, Ronald. Are you sharing with us right now? I think you're muted if you are.
Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't really prepared to share. I came in late, but I liked what I heard.
Well, I'm glad, and we are on a little bit of a rush, but no rush for you since you're our first volunteer, and we appreciate it so much. I love your background too, Ronald. I feel like that offers so much inspiration for other people as well. Can you describe the auroras that are behind Ronald right now and the trees? How can you incorporate that into your writing? Hi, Ellie.
Hi, so this is Nala and Eden.
Hello, Eden. How are you?
Almost, they're 8 and 6, and they
I'm so glad you joined us today.
weren't quite finished, but they did want to share what they started.
I'd love to hear it. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Doing part 2 right now though, but I just started part 2, but I can share part 1 now.
Okay. And are you Elena, or what's your name, sweetie?
Her name is Nala.
Nala. Okay, thank you. I apologize.
What was your inspiration for this?
My inspiration was the rain. So I changed up the rain and I made the snowdrops. One day I looked outside. I saw the raindrop in disguise. The snow has drifted down. The rain has disappeared into the wind. Stars have landed. The wolves came out. The raccoons came out. I go lay down in my bed. But part 2 was night drifts into day, but I'm not actually done. So maybe I can share after.
Yeah, I would love for you to share that after. I see you use so much vivid description and imagery. I can literally imagine all of the snow and the rain. That's awesome. And I love your title for part 2.
Would you like to share my next one, mine is a poem. It's named Raindrops of Light. As I woke up in the morning, I saw the rain pouring. When I went outside in the rain and I walked down my favorite lane, Such a gloomy weather, I said to my sister Heather. She said to me, what do you see? All I see is the big oak tree and the storm that looked like a great flake. When Heather looked at me with a smile as we went down another aisle, and after a while the rain stopped, I jumped with joy.
Wow, you all are beautiful writers. Again, with the vivid imagery and description. And was that a metaphor when you said raindrops of life? Were you making a comparison there?
Yes.
Beautiful, excellent. I'm gonna snap for that poem because that's what we do. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. All right, thank you all so much for sharing, for participating today. I am gonna have, if you girls would, do you mind holding up what you wrote for us on camera just so that we can get a view? How beautiful, lovely. Again, thank you all so much. That is gorgeous. I hope you finished that piece, that part 2, okay? So I do just want to say, to close out our session today, thank you all for joining me. I hope that you are able to incorporate these easy creative writing techniques into any type of piece you write. In times like this, it's really important that we are tapping into that creative spirit as often as possible, as much as possible. And so I do just want to say thank you again to the Gantt Center for creating this space for our community to come together, to share our words and our love of literature, and to use this as a way to get out some creative expression, some creative energy. So please support programs like this one. Check out the website at ganttcenter.org to know when the next free programs are, and to share with us, share on social media what you were able to create. If you spend a little bit more time after this to finish up your piece, tag us on social media. And again, just thank you all so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you for joining Family First, Arts from a Distance. We hope you enjoyed this afternoon's program. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Harvey B. Gantt Center's official YouTube page for updates on future workshops and other programs. To continue the free programs that highlight some of the best in Black arts and culture, please consider supporting the Gantt Center via our Text to Give platform by texting Unmasked to 345-345. You help further our mission. All contributions matter and truly make a difference. Visit our website, ganttcenter.org, to see all of our upcoming programs.